right, folks. Welcome once again, everybody, to Irish Sports Daily Power Hour. I'm your host, Mike Frank, here with Jamie Uyeyama, fresh off his trip from South Bend over the weekend to watch the Irish practice. We're going to talk to him, get all his thoughts on that. Before we get going, wanted to mention once again, it's a great time to sign up for Irish Sports Daily. You can go to the front page of Irish Sports Daily, click on the premium section, and sign up today. There's lots going on with recruiting, lots of buzz from this weekend, and really this last week in recruiting. I think the Notre Dame recruiting staff, wow, just doing a fantastic job, and we're going to talk about that as well in the show. Also wanted to mention, if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please go to YouTube and search for Irish Sports Daily and subscribe to our channel. Also like the videos, that type of thing. It'll allow you to know when we're going live, and also it'll put all our videos in your feed on YouTube. So search for us in YouTube for Irish Sports Daily, and you'll be able to find us there. And we'd greatly appreciate it if you like the videos, and also share them with your Notre Dame friends as well. So, social media, all that type of stuff really helps us out. So also wanted to mention our sponsor, which is ESQ. ESQ has been making the best handmade custom suits, sport coats, tuxedos, and shirts for the last decade. It's been featured on GQ, ESPN, USA Today. You've seen them dressing your favorite players and coaches as well. ESQ only gets the best fabric from Italy and England's top mills. With over 40,000 fabrics to choose from, you're guaranteed to look your best. Go visit esqclothing.com and book your appointment. Mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. Once again, that's esqclothing.com. All right, the first part of this show, Mr. Yama, is going to be the Mr. Yama show, and that's because the Yama was in South Bend. First of all, was the parade long? I mean, were there a lot of people there celebrating your arrival?
Oh, yeah. Whenever I show up at the airport, it's crazy. There's big signs all over the place, adoring fans, as always. I mean, I will say that when I was there for the playoff game, that was crazy coming into that game because there were so many people there. And I had people, Matt came to pick me up, of course. And as I was walking to his car, I had people shout at me, ISD or whatever. So I was like, oh, okay. Like, this must be a big game. Don't usually have people shouting ISD at me on my way to Matt's car. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I also wanted to mention before we get going, prayers for John Bryce, our good friend. He's having a family thing there, so we just wanted to say that as well. Hopefully, JB gets back home soon. Yama, let's start talking about what you saw while you were there. It's really our only opportunity, and you were there as well as Matt. And I just wanted to get your overall thoughts on what you saw from the practice.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough to get a gauge of anything really on offense because of all the people that were out on offense, right? Like, you think about probably 5 of the top 6 or 7 offensive linemen weren't practicing. So, when that happens, you're getting guys who would be on the second team moved up to the first team. And then the guys who are on the third team moved up to the second team. And that's just kind of how it was. So they were clearly overmatched. Like, there was some players who were out for on defense, but it was just like a handful of guys. And just about every front 7 player except for, I think, Donovan Heinisch and not including like Boubacar Traore and Jordan Botelho, who were already out. Everybody else played. So that made a pretty big difference when it was going up front. So, I mean, that did change how you viewed things. You didn't expect the offense to have a great day, and they didn't have a great day. But in saying that, I think there was a lot learned from it. I think you could still learn a lot from even the quarterbacks who were getting pressured, pretty constantly all day, and, of which guys kind of handled it best, on the day. And I think there was definitely some good things, way more good things, seen from defense, where I saw, I think even just regardless of who they're going up against, just guys making plays, playing fast, from a traits perspective, like things that were like really exciting about some of the defensive guys that maybe we haven't seen that much of. I was really, really excited by some of the young guys on defense, in particular. And
All right, well, let's talk about them. Who are you excited about?
I mean, Tay Johnson, I think, was easily the guy who was like the headline of everything, right? Because
Safety Tay Johnson, yes.
safety Tay Johnson, who was playing, he was playing the X Watts, old position, the field safety position, with the ones. He came out with the ones, and it was just him with the ones the whole time with him and Schuler when they came out. And he was just all over the place. You could tell he is a great, exceptional athlete. I think people knew that. But he was someone who, played corner a bit last year because they needed it after all the injuries. He came in. He had not played that much defense in high school because he was kind of asked to just basically be a running quarterback and even play a little receiver in high school. And he probably didn't really get developed in that way that because of it. So he had time to catch up. But you can see in the picture that Greg just put up, he's added like significant weight. He's up like 20 pounds since he first got to Notre Dame. He looks bigger. Seeing him standing next to Luke Talic, who everybody knows is a big dude, he doesn't look out of place next to him. Where before, if you looked at them last year, you would say, well, this guy's clearly a freshman and the other guy's clearly been in the program for a longer time. So you can tell that Tay Johnson has put in a lot of work. He was playing fast. He was playing downhill. He had multiple tackles for loss. He was playing in the backfield. He just looked and was playing inspired. Like he was playing like he wanted to make a statement. And I think he did make that statement. I think, most of the media would agree that he was the guy that stood out the most out of like the people that, you didn't already kind of know. Cause obviously like Drake Bowen looked good, it's not surprising. But that was something that out of the, newer guys that we hadn't seen much of, Tay Johnson really, really stood out. Looks like definitely he has got a chance to have a good shot at being that starter, coming on. And so we'll see how it progresses. I think that Jalen Sneed, a lot of questions about him because he obviously got bigger. Did he lose a step because he added so much weight in such a little time? He has not lost a step. He was looked the exact same kind of athlete, just bigger and more violent. And that, I think, is going to make a huge difference for him. It already looked like he made a huge difference. He made a great play on a swing screen to Jadarian Price on a tackle for loss. You could see him handle the inside run a lot better, where you just see him like take on blocks better, just being able to like play a little bit more bounce. He also did, really showed some stuff on one-on-one pass rush stuff that was exciting. That isn't surprising based on what we've seen, but you can even tell that has helped him there. I mean, all the linebacker, they look really, really good, right? They look really good. Not that guys were making a ton of plays, but you could tell KVA slimmed down. He looked great in one-on-ones, had a filthy spin move on one. The defensive tackles, I think Donovan Heinisch did not take part in the day. He did it in individual. I don't know. They were holding him out. Everybody else looked pretty good. Like I know it. I'm not just talking about how they looked against the guys they're going against, because it clearly wasn't the best, group on the offensive line. But still, you're going against Jaguson, Sullivan, Absher, and Auding, who looked pretty good at center, I would say. And those guys did a good job against him. Anye looks massive. He was, and pass rush wise, was doing a lot of the same things that he did at the end of last year, before end of his last year, right? But when midseason, when he was no longer with the team. So that was very encouraging. Rubio obviously looks solid against the run. I mean, he is what he is in terms of a pass rusher, but I thought Dawson really looked, kind of like as advertised. Elijah Hughes showed some stuff particularly as a pass rusher. Armel Mukum has made a big jump. He looks fantastic. Definitely there's some inconsistencies with him, just, from snap to snap that you want to see, but it's not an effort thing. It's definitely not an effort thing. You see that this is a guy, you can tell the way he jumped in all the time. He wants to be great. He wants to be great. And I saw some really, really, exciting stuff from him on the day. Cole Mullins, who was playing end in the scrimmage, but I don't think we even really expected to see him because we weren't sure about his status with his knee. He was wearing a knee brace. Most guys, there's a lot of guys who wear double braces for the defensive line. He was wearing the knee brace for the on the knee that that he had surgery on. He looked awesome in terms of his one-on-one pass rush, like extremely quick, extremely twitchy. All of that stuff is inside. I know some people have questions about him, whether he's going to be an end. I don't think he's an end. He looks much bigger than he was last year, where I think, Mike, you were with me. He looked like just an undersized guy kind of battling it out. You could see things there from him inside.
Oh yeah.
He's clearly bigger. He still has room to get bigger, upper body wise, but he's got big legs. He's going to be, I think, a guy who carries 290 and be a good, interior pass rusher. Bryce Young looks fantastic. He looks just devastatingly good. He has clearly made a jump and is just playing more confident, more fast. He is obviously a monster too. You can see that physical development with him. I know. I mean, there's a ton of guys. I'm listening. Feels like I'm listening to everyone right now, but it just really, like, there were so many guys that I think when you're looking at, like, especially when we get this first look at these guys for like the long, for a long practice for the long period of time. I'm always looking at like the jumps that they made technically, like just, with them, how they play stuff in terms of like, well, defeating blocks, playing faster, just instinctually them not making less mistakes. And I just thought that you saw guys physically look like several guys make huge jumps, and they didn't have a long time in between the off season, but it's clear that these guys have put in work in these past like 6 to 8 weeks, of really, really like making a big difference with them.
All right, well, I want to get to the offensive side of things and just point out a few things. Jamie, you mentioned the offensive line. Lots of guys that have not really played much at all. Styles Prescott getting tons of reps. Matty Augustine getting tons of reps. Owen Streberg getting tons of reps. Otting, Cam Herron. These guys that we really don't know much about. It is bad that you don't get your starters in there to kind of get some familiarity, but a lot of those guys have played. But to continue to get Charles the reps, Jugasaw the reps that he needs, and continue develop also Sullivan Absher, who's probably getting more kind of quality reps than you would have if all these guys were healthy and participating. It does suck about Gerby Lambert. I have to admit that's really kind of the one negative thing. But if you're a coaching staff, it does suck because I think it's hard to find what you're looking for in a quarterback, and we're going to talk about that next. Because you don't get to see a lot of the quarterback stuff that you want to see because he's running for his life the entire time. So that kind of sucks. But what I do think it does is you get a really good look at your depth and what you just got in these players, the young players. And I think that helps really set what you need to now go get in the future. So as bad as it seems at times that, hey, maybe it would be nice to have all these offensive linemen playing together and getting that cohesion together. Fall, they'll be able to do that. They'll be able to do that. And then, of course, over the summer as well. But just having that opportunity, I think, is really going to help Rudolph. Also, it's going to help them kind of fine-tune and know how to coach these guys, where they need to be. You wouldn't have gotten that kind of look, I think, any other spring, and that really helps. And then, I mean, I hate to be cold and crass, but it also lets you know, okay, I think this guy can make it here, or he may not be here.
That's very true.
And you're going to have to look to push him out at some point. I hate to say that, but that's where we're at, Yama. That's just where it is.
That's the reality of college football, right? And it's even more of a reality when it comes to like the 105 and stuff like that, where
Sure.
unfortunately you have to like even judge walk-ons harshly in that way, right? So I think that is something that is just a reality where you're looking at your roster and you're looking at like the offensive lines, particularly the depth, right? And I think you're always gonna I would be surprised. You're always gonna carry a ton of offensive linemen. So it's not like they're gonna, I think, cut like a bunch of offensive linemen based off of this. But I think you definitely see things where it's like if you see something where like this guy isn't showing enough, that's a problem. Because I think, we talked about previously about Chris Tarek, right? And he's hurt this spring, which is too bad because I think he would have really benefited from it. And I thought he really made a jump, but he was someone who made a big jump over that first year, the first time on campus. And I think he might be, he now became a guy who I thought it's going to be a long haul for him to be like, he's got a shot. And I think that's the one thing that I look at with a lot of those offensive linemen. Like we know guys like Jugusaw, Sullivan Absher. I think those guys, you already had a pretty good idea. I mean, Jugusaw for sure, but like Absher, you already had a pretty good idea. Like, hey, this guy's got a chance to really play, maybe even push for a starting job this year, right?
Yeah, sure.
But with everybody else, it was all kind of in question. And Otting, I think it was like very much a prove it spring for him. And I think he looks solid. Like, I think that he's going to be like, he's the next center if it's not Ashton Craig or if they don't move somewhere. I'm not 100% certain, but I'm certain now that he has a chance and he might be someone who could play. And that is definitely not something that I could have answered before. And I mean, frankly, Cam Herron as an early enrollee, and you're not getting too high of expectations for an early enrollee. He was outstanding in one-on-ones. Like, I mean, it took till his fourth rep for anyone to beat him. And he wasn't just going against,
Slugs,
other, new guys.
Early enrollees.
Yeah. He won against Jared Dawson. He won against Seviano was the first guy he won against and he stoned him. He went against Mookum. He beat him. He went against Jalen Sneed lined up as like just as a stand-up from there. And he beat him. And then it finally took Mookum, beat him on like the fourth or fifth rep that he took. And it was eye-opening, right? That a guy that could come in and do that. I think he struggled a bit more in the scrimmage part of it, which is to be expected. But you can see a lot of pieces there. We're like, man, this guy's got a chance to be really good. And I thought the same thing with like Augustine and Styles Prescott from both scrimmages and the one-on-one stuff where you could see them. I mean, for Prescott, really, this is kind of like the first time really he's able to practice fully ever at Notre Dame because he's been hurt basically since he's been here. And then Augustine just all of a sudden, because Lambert got hurt, he gets kind of thrown into the mix where all of a sudden he has to be somebody who has to, play like a ton in the scrimmages where he's like with the first team. And considering that he's an early enrollee, like we've seen some early enrollees might get eaten alive in the spring. And I don't want to judge them too harshly for it, but it's technically, it's kind of not a great sign that they're not even at least showing a little bit of fight back. And I wouldn't say that Augustine is where I thought like Anthony Knapp was last spring, but I would say like he lost a rep and then he'd win a rep, and you'd see good things from him where you're like, oh, this guy really has a chance. Once he physically develops, once he technically develops, puts more time in, he's got a chance to play. And the same thing with Prescott, right? Where I saw good things for both these guys. And so I think that's like, really, really encouraging. And I would say even if Owen Strebig, I think he's got further to go than some of those other guys, but like he definitely had some things where I'm like, oh, he's not like a guy that I would just write off. Like he is someone that I think, has tools to play, and you see him battle and compete. And I just thought that there was encouraging enough signs from the guys who weren't, you don't expect to play much this year, but you can see them developing into something going forward. And I think that, that's really like Joe Rudolph's MO too, is that he develops guys.
Yeah. I don't understand how any offensive lineman wouldn't be just jumping on board to come here. It just doesn't make sense. You would think you'd be able to say, look, I took 5 guys, right, who had 6 total starts, a true freshman, right, who was undersized, and we went and we were that close to winning the national championship. Imagine what I can do when you're a sophomore or junior, and your body's developed. I mean, you looked at Augustine there, and you could see his arms are not very big. Greg just put the picture up. His arms are not very big. He's not like a massive dude. He's going to get bigger, and once he does, that's going to help him with a lot of the things that he has there. But I think a lot of people want to talk quarterback, and I do too. It's interesting because you got to see what you saw. We've heard some stuff, I guess behind the scenes. And if you followed this show long enough, you'll know that I've been saying for quite some time that I don't think it's as clear cut and dried as a lot of people think. All these people who think that CJ Carr is going to start and was just, the light years better than everybody else. I kept saying that's not true. I don't know where this idea came from. I do think he's a very talented guy. Please don't, think that I'm not saying he's not talented and can't win this. I think that there's a great shot for him to win this. But I also think there's a great shot for Kenny Minchey to win this. And we've heard very good things about Kenny all spring so far. I also think, Angeli does good things when he's in there. So it's not as cut and dried, I think, as a lot of people think. And, I just want to, I guess, stress again that I just don't think that people – I think a lot of people got sold this idea that CJ Carr would be the starter, and that's just the way it is. And what I don't want people to think is that, I'm gonna be down on CJ Carr if he doesn't start, because that you shouldn't be down on him. He's still a very talented player, and could start, and very well may. But if he doesn't, that doesn't mean that he's a bust or not a good player. It means that they got some pretty good quarterbacks besides CJ Carr. And I think that's the way you need to look at it, Jamie. And, we heard Marcus in the press conference say, we'll announce a starter as soon as we know who that is. I don't see that happening this spring. I really don't. No. I think it's going to be fall. And I think it's tight. I don't think it's anything different than what we thought it would be. And, I wouldn't say that there's one clearly better than the other, but I do think, just based off of things we've heard, Kenny Minchey's really surprised and played really, really well. And Steve and CJ are pretty much what we thought they'd be. So what that means, I don't know. I guess we'll see. Your thoughts here?
Yeah, and I think it's impossible for us as the media to go in and see one day and just say, like, this is it. Based on that. Like, I mean, I remember, a couple springs ago when it was Buckner and Sam Hartman, and Hartman was miserable on that day. He had a horrible day, and Buckner wasn't lights out, but he was significantly better than Hartman that day. Mm-hmm. Well, by the end of spring, it had flipped, right? It had flipped. And then obviously, like, the day after spring ball, Buckner was out. So I don't, there's still more ball game to go, and there's, a lot of ball game to go, I think, really, because I don't think there is going to be a starter named anytime soon, like you said. I just really think that, people who were discounting Kenny Minchey, I mean, that practice was a reminder that they shouldn't be. He was the one who came out with the ones on that day. And I don't think it was intentional for them to do that, like, in front of the media on that day or anything like that. But if you're just in that part of practice and he's the one who's coming out with the ones in the first place, I think that says that he's put himself in contention. And like you said, we had heard really good things about him and how he's doing. And to me, he looked, and obviously it's, part of it is based on who, he got to play with a little bit better players, and part of it is just how he handled things. And I thought he handled the pressure the best out of all 3 guys. He threw a pick that was, it got tipped by Mullins and then picked by Isaiah Dunn, but it was more on like a blown assignment up front that he was just going to get blown up. on an RPO, that then I would even really put it on him. But outside of that, I don't think he really made a bad decision during the day. I thought he really he looked great getting out of the pocket. He was the best at throwing it on the move out of all of them. Carr threw it well on the move as well too. But I thought he was the one who handled it best in terms of making the right decisions, putting it on guys. There were some drops there that affected him, but it wasn't his fault. He put it on the money. He was the most accurate there. He made, I thought, probably the 3 of the 4 best throws on the day where it belonged to Minchey. So, and you saw his legs in terms of him, scrambling and what he can do there too. So, I was definitely impressed with him. I mean, I've always liked him as a prospect and kind of what he can do and what he can offer. So I don't think anyone who was saying well, it's going to be Angeli because he's got the experience, or it's going to be Carr because he's the highest rated guy and he's got the type. It's definitely not. I didn't see anything from those other guys to say that, well, this guy's going to be out at the end of spring or anything like that. So I don't want to get it twisted at all. But I definitely think that, you could see someone were reading the tea leaves and being like, maybe I'm going to get out at the end of spring. I mean, it could always happen, but I'm just leaning more and more towards, unless we see something or hear something in the next week that it really changes our view of where things are going, then I think all 3 will probably be there at the very least in August.
I know you don't want to read too much into a spring game performance, but if I'm a coach, I put that a little bit more than a practice. I just do, because there's fans in the stands, and you have to weigh in pressures and things like that. But it's probably the best thing, in my opinion, in judging a guy like Minchey, because we know from past experience and talking to people that it's the questionable decisions that has kind of held him back, where he'll make 4 amazing plays and then throw a dumb pick that just shouldn't have happened. I think in the spring game last year, we saw that. He had one that was just like, what are you doing? So you look great, and then all of a sudden you throw this thing, and it's like, well, you can't have that. And Buckner was very much the same way, where he'd look great and then just throw a complete boneheaded play, and you're like, you can't live with that. And Wimbush was the same way, so I think when you look at accuracy, I think Kenny's far more advanced than either of those guys are, as far as a thrower. And so that's the good thing, and still has the legs. But I think it's going to help him in that he's going to have to prove to the staff that he can be trusted. And so he's got to play like he did on the day we saw every day, I think, to get that stigma removed from him. So I think for spring game, it's going to be very critical that these guys, whoever wants to win this job, show up and play well. I think if you play bad, it's going to hurt you. If I were a coach, I would look at it that way. Of course, I would factor in pressures and drops and offensive line play and all that type of stuff, and who's in the game. Of course, I'd factor that in there, but it comes down to decisions, and are you making the right ones? And even if you're pressured on every single play, can you do the things you're supposed to do? Throw it away. Don't put the ball in jeopardy. Hit your check down. Do whatever you got to do to make sure that it's not a negative play. And that, I think, is the thing that Kenny has to overcome. And we'll see whether that happens. Now, Jamie, the last thing I want to hit on this is we've talked about everything else, but wide receiver, I mean, I just hate hearing that they're still dropping balls. And at some point, and again, it's one practice, so we can't go into panic mode. But at some point, these guys got to be, consistent. And as a coach, is it jugs machines? Is it? And here's the thing that I think that people don't really get about why it's so important to have depth, Jamie, because if you have depth and that, these are your starters and these are the second line guys. The second line guys are trying to fight for playing time. They just want any playing time. And they know that in order to even get on the field, they have to really up their game and show that, hey, you can take uh, uh, Jaden Greathouse out of the game, and I'm going to give you something, right? When there's not a set depth chart, yeah, everybody's competing, but I don't think it's the same. It's not the same because you're trying to get on the field. If you know that this guy's a starter and you're going to have a hard time getting on the field, you're working your butt off to try and show that, hey, you can take him off the field and put me in here. I'll do something good. And so I think part of it is the depth and leadership situation. I'm sure that Greathouse is doing the best job he can to lead these guys, but at some point they're going to have to start catching these footballs. And it's if you have one guy dropping, it's one thing, right? But if you've got multiple guys dropping, then you're not coaching something right, or something's not being done right, because it shouldn't continue to happen in year two. Your thoughts here?
I don't know if that's fair to say they're not coaching it right, because like if you look at like last year, like Bo Collins just drops. That's what he does. Like Bo Collins has had a problem dropping passes his whole time. Faison, obviously, that was something that was different, but you could pretty much isolate it to those two guys last year. They were the guys that I mean, Jade Greathouse was automatic, catching the football pretty much, right? And it's the same kind of thing with this. And I think with like the problem is that if you're Cam Williams and you're not getting a lot of, you just have a chance to really like, he would have scored a touchdown. Like he drops an RPO, slant, beat Cree Thomas clean off the line. He's going 50 to the crib. And everybody's writing about Cam Williams, and I know it's just based off one play, but they would be like Cam Williams ready to make the jump. But then he drops the pass. To be fair, it was a bit behind. Like he should have had it, but it wasn't a perfect pass. It wasn't on the money. Like where usually you see that more from Steve Angeli. It wasn't quite on the money, and he dropped it. Still should have had it. He dropped it. And really, the other guy was Burris, who also caught. I mean, he got the most targets. So I don't know if I want to put it right on, because when we're talking about one drop pass from Cam Williams, and there was definitely multiple from Burris in the day. He also, made up for it. He scored a big touchdown at the end, but I do think, that is something that people need. You have to work on. You have to get better at all that kind of stuff. And we've seen guys get better at it. I don't think it's going to be a big problem this year for Notre Dame. Because Malachi Fields, that's the thing. If Malachi Fields comes in and he starts dropping passes, well, he's never really dropped passes in his career, then I'll say, okay, what's going on here? But he's coming in, and that's one of the main things. No, it's not going to happen, right? So
I
already look at
catch the ball. You know what I mean?
And the thing is with Will Pauling, he had problems with drops last year at Wisconsin. Not when Mike Brown was there. Actually, when Mike Brown was there, he caught the ball way better. So if Pauling comes out and he drops, then you're like, okay, well, he's had problems with that before. So I think it's so much of it's individual. Sometimes, honestly, I even think it's just as simple as you got to get laser eye surgery here. Some of these guys, I honestly believe that, Mike, with some of these guys, that it's something that you don't do, or guys don't play with contacts and they should, or whatever, right? But it can be a huge problem. You don't want to be Georgia. Georgia, basically, their whole season got blown up because of drop passes. You don't want to be that. But I don't know. I'm just gonna wait to see kind of where it is, because I hadn't heard that about Cam Williams. That was a problem for him. Would have been great if he would have caught that pass in that thing. People would have looked at it a lot different. But I also don't want to I don't want to overreact to just the one play. If he got that play in the in the scrimmage, I don't want to overreact to the one play either. And for Burris, I'm just he's got a lot of time. He's not going to play this year.
Yeah. No, he'll get better. There's no question. All right. I want to get to recruiting. And I think it's I mean, when I started kind of just looking at all this and trying to, you put your wish list together and that type of thing. And if you've been following along on the boards, our Irish Sports Daily boards, you'll notice Mike's pretty damn positive, and I've been that way on this podcast too, because I just believe recruiting is really starting to turn like it's supposed to. And so I kind of went and put some thoughts together, and at running back, they have Osborne coming again this weekend, and I think Notre Dame leads there. I really do. So if you could get him in fold, that's a pretty darn good player. But they also have Bonner, who I love. I think he's a tremendous talent, and I think Notre Dame's very, very much in the mix with him. And I think Brian Bonner is just the type of back they need. Somebody can hit a home run at any point. And I think Osborne can too, but Bonner's got some really good speed. I really like him. But then you also have Jonas Walton, the kid from Georgia, who's supposed to be at Notre Dame tomorrow. You've got DeStephen Walker, who's going to be there on Friday. So they've got backs that they're in very good shape with right now. And, they'll get 2 out of those 4 for sure. I will be shocked if they don't. And maybe there's some other backs that even come and are interested. But then you look at wide receiver, and we know they have Faison already in the mix. Bubba Frazier just visited this weekend. Sounds like everything went really well there. I think he's a strong lean for Notre Dame. So say you get him in the boat. You've got Braden Robinson, kind of a similar player, but small kind of gadget player. He's coming this week. But you also have Brian Williams, who's a teammate of Noah Grubbs, who's what you need. He's the big, long, tall dude, right? He's the boundary receiver. He can get vertical. He's not, I would say, a elite speed guy, but he does have the ability to get vertical. And he's what you're looking for. And then, of course, you got Kadon Finley still very much in the mix. You still have Mason James and Brody Keefe. Say you get Faison and Frazier in, then you got to get 2 more for sure. And I think they're trending in a good situation. Obviously, Caden Finley, I think they have a great shot at. And then it comes down to, can you get the big guy? And, is it Brian Williams? Is it Brody Keefe? I would still take Mason James. I would take Braden Robinson as a gadget player. I think he's really good. Then you look at tight end, and it sounds like Jacobson, who visited this weekend, the kid from Iowa, is real high on their list, and he likes Notre Dame a lot. So that sounds good. We know they're going to take 2. So Prenner, who's already visited, he likes Notre Dame quite a bit. And then you also have Isaac Jensen, who visited this week from Nebraska. He's a guy that I think Notre Dame's right there, probably with Nebraska. And then you've got Mueller visiting this week. So again, you got to get 2 out of the 4 here. I think they're in good shape. And when I look at offensive line, they've got Ojo, they've got Patrick, they've got Mikio, they've got Aboko, who I don't think they're going to have much of a shot at. We'll see. I know he's going to visit, or he plans to visit. We'll see whether that happens, but I think they got a longer way to go with him. Ojo may be a long shot, but hey, he's visiting this week, right? He's visiting Thursday, so a lot can change. I really liked Makio. I watched his film, Jamie. I love this kid. I'm surprised.
I like him too.
I think he's a really good player. I might like him better than the 3 they already have. I honestly do. You watch his film, Jamie. The first thing he does, great pull, goes in the middle, finds the linebacker, and the linebacker tries to avoid him. A lot of guys don't have the ability to change when they're moving forward like that, to turn and find his guy and push him out of the way. The second play, great job of pass protection. And then you look, he plays defense. You can see this is a very good athlete, and I really like him. I think he's a really talented player. It'll be interesting to see if Mpuma, the guy from Illinois, obviously comes from a high school that has, a lot of times kids have been interested. I like his film, Jamie. I think he's a really talented player.
He's really talented athlete.
I mean, he's raw, but he could be Charles good. He really could be. It's going to take some time, just like Charles. It took a little bit of time too, but I really think he's a very talented and underrated player. So, really, you only need to get one out of those guys. Me personally, I love Ojo. I'd love to get him, but if you don't get him and you get Makio or Puma, I feel pretty darn good about that. I really do. And then we talked about defensive line. Matt had put together a great, kind of thing on it for the boards. But, man, when you look, they already have Ebenezer and Fold. We know that they have a great shot at Ronnie Dunham. Drake Quinn visited this week, and they really like him, and he likes them. You've got ZGH. He's coming. I think it's this week. He's coming again. I think it's on Friday. Mikael Blade was there this weekend, and another guy. I think both ZJH and Blade probably more strong side defensive ends. Don't you think that's where they'll end up?
Yeah,
I think so too. I see
for both those guys.
And then you look at potential tackles. Like, to me, I see Ebenezer, Dunham, and Quinn probably more of Vipers. Could grow into strong side defensive end, but I see them probably more as Vipers. And then I look at Elijah Golden and Kari Wilder, and I think those are two defensive tackle prospects. We have Tiki Holas coming in. I think it's Friday, and Noah Clark says he's going to visit. Those are your two nose guards. Man, I would have a hard time turning down any of these guys, Jamie. How do you turn any of these guys down?
I honestly think they should just load up, because I think I think it's a really good year overall at the defensive line. And I think whenever there's those strong years on either side of the line, those are the years that even I don't care about your numbers. Load up, because the numbers will work themselves out down the line in terms of like which guys are going to rise to the top and which guys aren't. And then also, like, you're going to find too that there's going to be other guys that you've recruited in previous classes that if they don't have the same ceiling, I don't know why you don't just, load up in those areas. And I think it's different at certain spots where it's like, you can only take if it's a loaded year at running back. Well, you're never going to take more than 2 running backs in a year, right? It's not the same. But line of scrimmage, especially when you are a line of scrimmage team, a program, as Marcus Freeman has said multiple times, that's what you got to do, because you have to. And I think when you look at it, it's just all the kind of things, it'll work itself out. And I also think that those 2 position rooms in particular are the kind of rooms where some guys might leave, but for the most part, it's very big. Culture is a huge part of it, like brotherhood between all those guys. And guys don't mind if they're like rotation guys and they're playing, or they're like, or even if you're like developing, you root for your guys so hard, your teammates, and you're part of it. So I just think it's something that they should take. And to be honest too, Matt has said that they they don't have a number, right? They don't have a number set. And I don't think they should really have a number. They should just add. And then if they get to a point where they're like, okay, like we got to stop at some point, do it. But like, I just don't think there's anything wrong with, kind of where they're at. Like, you just want to get as many guys as possible. And I look at all of these guys, and especially because we saw a lot of these guys come visit this week and saw them in person. And a lot of these guys just look different in the good way. Like, they're just like long and big and just going to become monsters. And the type of guys that, frankly, Notre Dame doesn't have enough of, and has always had a tough time getting. So, which is why, like, when you get like Bryce Young types, it's like you want to get more. And there's only so many guys that are that kind of athletic in that too. But you just want to just keep adding as many of those guys as possible. It's what made Georgia. It's what made Alabama. So I think it's a pretty good formula. I think you should follow it.
Yeah. Matt McCarthy has a question. Jamie and Mike, how would you rate the following edge players? Dre Quinn, McQuell, Blade, Xavier Griffin Haynes. He said Quinn's junior film was the best, in my opinion. I agree with that. I think Dre Quinn, I think they're different players, though. And I think Mikael Blade and Xavier Griffin Haynes are more strong side defensive end. And I think Quinn is more of a Viper type that could potentially grow into a strong side defensive end. But if you're looking for kind of the next, Bryce Young, Blade and Griffin Haynes kind of have more of that type of frame, right? They just have the longer frame and they list it 6'6". I'd say, it's probably close, maybe 6'5" for both, I think, but they're very good players. And so I'd take at least one of Blade or Griffin Haynes, and then definitely take Quinn. And then you got 4 outstanding defensive ends, provided that Dunham comes. And then you go, shooting for your defensive tackles. So, and I would take at least 3 interior guys. I would take all 4 if you could get them. And I know that seems crazy because then you're at 8 defensive linemen. But when are you going to get, we know Tiki Hola is going to decide early. So when are you going to get a Noah Clark? Notre Dame struggles to get a 315-pound guy. They just do. And if you can get him, then you don't have to get him next year. And Tiki Hola then has the ability to kind of grow into his position as well and become the type of player he wants. So a great position to be in. Then you look at linebacker, and obviously they got Davis, who's outstanding. It seems like Clapper is probably the most likely at this point. But then Tank King also visits on 423. And so I'd say those 3 are probably the 3 most likely at this point. People look at Tank King's ranking and they're like, well, he's not ranked very high. But then you look at who's offered him, Jamie, who's going after him hard, and it's everybody. His ranking is just way off. But boy, if you could get those 3, I'd feel pretty good about that. You?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm a big Jacoby Clapper guy too. Yeah. Like I really think he is a really good, like just an outstanding linebacker. Like I think his floor is super high. I do like Tank King as well. Like I think his rating is kind of, I don't agree with his rating and where they have him. I think he's better than where he's ranked a lot of times too. I think some of it is like he didn't have like good testing numbers. But I watched the kid play, and I know that he's also someone who's like he's a baseball player. He's played basketball. Like he's a good athlete. Like I don't worry about him as an athlete, and he's also like extremely like lights out hitter. Like he's a guy who's wants to hit through you. So I like him. So I think that if they end up those are the 3, that's a solid linebacker.
All right. And then you look at DB and you've got Nick Reddish, who says Notre Dame leads. I love this kid, man. I love his film. Granted, it's only sophomore because he got hurt. I would like to see how he moves, after getting hurt. But, man, you watch his kid's film, Jamie, he's a good football player. Very, very big hitter for his size. Can cover, explosive. I mean, I think he's a nickel. I really do. He could play safety for sure, but I think he could play nickel for Notre Dame. And I love Joey O'Brien. But outside of those 2, there's not a lot of options at safety right now. So Notre Dame's going to have to hit on those guys. And if you land those 2, I'm feeling really good about that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously they've had Zachariah Fort on campus too. But they'll have to flip him, if that's the case. But they had him a couple times on campus. So it's not like out of the question that, they might be in the mix for him. I do really like him too. I think he's really explosive. Reddish is just, you could just tell he's a smart football player, like high football
Very
IQ,
smart,
just instinctive. O'Brien, there's so many things to like about him, with his ball skills and range and just all of that too. So I do think that like Reddish is one of these guys that I think I want to see him more as an athlete like this season to kind of like get a better picture of like what I think he is as an athlete. But I also think he's someone who has like an extremely high floor that is going to be like, you're going to take him and he's going to play. Like, I don't know how good he is. I want to see a little bit more as an athlete, whatever, but like he's going to play. And obviously O'Brien, I think his ceiling is sky high.
I think he's going to be an Ike Taylor type of player, or the Taylor kid they had committed last year. I think
Ivan Taylor, yeah.
Ivan Taylor. I think he's going to be that type of player. I really do. And then you look at corner, and there's, again, not a lot of options, unfortunately, but they're in pretty good shape with them. Jordan Thomas, we'll see. Kari Adams just visited. Giselle Hart. They already have Chaston Smith. I think it depends on whether you look at Reddish as a safety or as a corner, a nickel. Do you need, say he jumps on board, do you need 3 more or 2 more to go with Chaston Smith? I'm not sure you do, but you certainly need one. And look, if you can get both Thomas and Adams, you take both. You don't even think twice about it. But I think that I like both those players. I mean, I think that's exactly what they need, is to land those two. And, we'll see whether they have a chance to do that. But there's not a lot of what I'd call plan B in secondary right now. That's usually the case, Jamie. When we get down to this, it's usually the case. And usually Mike Mickens closes on the guys that he wants. So we just got to have faith that that's what he's going to do. And he's kind of singled in and knows what he's doing and that type of thing. But, I do think corner is important. We've seen what Leonard Moore can do. We've seen what some of these guys can do. And so it sounds like Creed Thomas has looked pretty good. So that's encouraging. You got 2 really talented guys coming in and Zachary and Dallas Golden. So, but I think it's important to continue to get 2 quality corners every class. So, but overall, Jamie, I couldn't be more happy with where things are. Would I like a few more options at some of those positions? Yeah, but if they land who they really want, man, it's going to be a very impressive class, and I'll be thrilled with it. Final thoughts?
I think that it's funny how like a few weeks can just change the total outlook of everything, because obviously it was one of those things where it was in question. You wanted to see like how many of these guys are they going to get on campus, and what is it going to look like after they got on campus. And I think what we're seeing, obviously, is that they have done a great job at getting these guys on campus, and have also like making a great impression. And I'm not talking about like, the regular puff pieces of like, hey, I love the visit or whatever. No, when we're hearing like feedback around the program and from, these other people who are involved with these recruitments, where we know that Notre Dame is doing a really good job with these guys. And frankly too, like, we named all these guys, Mike, and yes, we don't know how it's going to turn out. Like, they got to close and they got to do all this kind of stuff too. Who out of these guys seems like a reach? None of them. There isn't a single guy that we even look at. Even some of the guys where I'm like, where they're ranked right now, I'm like, that's not ranking, is not going to stay. These guys are blue chippers. Like, these are all blue chippers. And I think that one of the things that you would see with some of it is that there was always a certain things where, maybe they just weren't on as many of these blue chippers, right? Where you're just, they certainly did well, but not to this point, I think, where it was like, I think if let's just say they do like just above average closing with these guys, that's going to be I think, honestly, it'll be the best class that they've signed in, I don't know, a decade or something like that. Certainly, and it really has a chance to be like a fantastic class. And like, I don't care where it's ranked, whatever, top 5, top 10, whatever. I do not care, because I always look at like, did they hit their needs? Did they get the numbers that they wanted? What kind of guys can they get? Where can these guys be? If I'm looking at it down the line and I'm saying, well, they're going to play Georgia in the college football playoff, they're going to play Ohio State in the college football playoff. Could these guys be guys in a few years that play against those teams? And I look at all these guys and I'm like, I'd say it for just about every one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I think you're 100% right. There's not a lot of guys where you're scratching your head. You're going, why'd they offer this guy? There's just not a lot of guys like that. And in the past, I think we've said that far too many times. And some of those guys ended up in the class, unfortunately, and that's just the way it is. The other thing I think is encouraging, Jamie, and I've tried to kind of say this is that in the past, I think we were getting a lot of what I'd consider optimistic viewpoints on things, right? And so we'd hear things and it would be very optimistic and it just wouldn't quite materialize. I think this is different because the actions of the players after the fact seem to indicate what we were told was going to happen, right? And that gives me confidence that what we're hearing is that, it's more the truth than maybe what we were getting before. And again, I think it's so important to point out that it was important for Notre Dame and important for Marcus Freeman to make sure that the people that he has running the recruiting part of things now and the GM, they really have a good read on where things are. And I think that we're getting that now finally. I think we're getting an accurate picture of where things are, and that's going to help Marcus Freeman close and figure out who he needs to close on and who he has a chance to close on and whether they need to expand the board and those types of things. But the other thing that I think is important to point out, Jamie, is I would say other than maybe a Boko, and again, he's not the most talkative kid, so it's hard to really say, what he thinks. But other than him, I haven't heard one guy come out and you're just like, yeah, it didn't go very well, or they didn't seem to really like it. You know what I mean? It seems like every single kid that shows up there is very excited about Notre Dame and wants to be part of it, and that's what we were hoping Marcus Freeman would bring. That's what we were excited about with him as a recruiter and as a head coach. And if they can start doing this, man, good things are going to happen because we already know they can coach. I mean, we already know they can flat coach. And I think they did a tremendous job of coaching last year. Most of those guys are back, and I think we're going to see another tremendous job of coaching this year, and it'll be fun to watch. We got some questions. I don't know how many we're going to get to because we're going to run out of time, but I just wanted to hit a few of them. The first one, how does Lambert's injury impact the starting offensive line? I don't know if it impacts anything at this point. We'll see what happens in the fall. But I think it impacts his ability to play, shoot and learn and really press for a starting position. That doesn't mean that he can't do it in the fall. It's just you would love to have these opportunities. And so I do think it limits that. You wanted to know about the tight end class. We already kind of broke all that down and all the recruiting things. Question for you, Jamie. What young players impressed and make you feel confident about the future of the program?
I mean, I went over a lot of the guys, obviously, like Tay Johnson, obviously, is one of those guys who stood out. But I would say even when you're, and I talked about those young offensive linemen too, because I think most of the things with the offensive line is there's very few guys that come in and you're like, are Blake Fisher or Joe Alt, that come in and you're like, oh, this guy's probably going to play this year, that doesn't happen. You want to see pieces of where they're at. And I think you saw that a lot with a lot of the O-line class. And, I mean, I'm excited about Cam Heron. I'm definitely excited about him. Frankly, I'm excited about Burris too. I know he had some drops, but I thought he looked good. I thought he looked good, and you saw a lot of stuff with him as a route runner and just how he moved and his speed that was impressive to me. And Scrap Richardson, who I didn't really talk about, and I only saw just a tiny bit of, obviously, but he athletically, he impressed me. He impressed me. Cree Thomas, another young guy that I thought looked good. I liked all the young safeties too. Ethan Long had a big hit in the scrimmage. I think Jadon Blair is definitely it's never easy for a freshman to play, but he looks like he's a guy who can be a player. And I thought he was definitely, I didn't see anything with him athletically where he isn't going to be a factor. He came down in the run game, made a nice play. I thought Urlacher wasn't really talked about a lot too, but I saw some good stuff from Urlacher as well. I like the I like the young safeties. I like the safety room. Like I think that is going to be a good room for a while, and I think too, like, I wish I got to see a little bit more of the young linebackers. Just didn't get to see too much of them. But you could tell Matt Fermo, he's a really good athlete, really, really good athlete. He's skinny at 224 right now. He's going to put on a lot of weight, and he's going to be exciting to watch when he does. Like, I mean, I say this is skinny. The guy looks jacked here, but he is absolutely, like, I'm just talking about in terms of his frame and how he compares to like the starters. You could tell he's a freshman. And he's a developed freshman, but he is going to get way bigger. I think he's got a frame to get like he could be around 240 plus. Like that could happen for him. So yeah, I was excited about a lot of the young guys that I think, like, out of the new guys that can be foundational. And obviously, like, guys like I'm not including guys like KVA, because obviously, like, yes, he's a sophomore, but he's already gonna, everybody already kind of knows he is foundational.
All right. Interesting question. What are your thoughts and insights in general on how the 105 roster NIL portal all sorts out for ND this spring? It seems like there will be a lot of tough conversations this week and next. That's kind of the bad part of it. It's a bad part of the job. And, I got to figure that it'll probably be more walk-ons that are let go than actual, scholarship players. But that doesn't mean that there won't be some scholarship players that they have conversations with and say, you know what, we've watched you, it's probably not going to work out here. I wouldn't be surprised if, 4 or 5 scholarship players left, maybe more. I don't know. But then, some walk-ons will certainly have to be cut. I don't like the 105 number. I think it needs to be 115, Jamie. I really do. I understand why they're doing it, but I think it needs to be 115. Most squads are 125 at least right now, So you're taking away 20 practice players, and that's a lot, that's just a lot. And the difference is, and I know a lot of people say, well, the NFL can get away with it. And it's like, yeah, but they can always hire somebody new. If somebody gets hurt,
sign somebody off the street.
They can sign them off the street. So it's not the same thing. So, that's just the reality of it. And so I wouldn't be surprised if, 4 or 5 scholarship guys left, maybe more. And will they be pushed out? I don't know, maybe. But I think it'll probably be more of your, walk-on guys. And I feel bad for those guys because they've been given everything they can, and it just is what it is. And unfortunately, but I think the NCAA screwed up. I think it needs to be 115. I really think they screwed up with this number. Your thoughts there?
I think they totally screwed up with it, because I haven't seen one person say that, like, hey, this is great. Yeah. This is exactly what they needed for this. I haven't seen one person, one coach, one administrator say that was the thing. I don't get it. I don't really understand why that was the number. Yeah, I think 115 would have been better. I mean, even if they just stretch it to 110, I think it would just be a lot better. I don't know. I don't think it's good for college football. I don't like it.
Who's your favorite 2026 commit or realistic top target, and why, Yama?
Well, my favorite is Rodney Dunham, the realistic top target. I think he's exceptional. I think he has a chance to be just a next level player very early on in his career, and could be, just a special player for Notre Dame. I think if we were just going to say out of the, I mean, there's a lot of guys that I also really like.
Yeah.
I mean, out of the commits, I'll say, just like in terms of, like, because I always do like a favorites, my 5 favorite guys when they sign in the class. And right now he's not like one of the highest rated guys, but I like Sullivan Garvin. I think he has a chance to be, he's definitely going to be a guard or interior guy. He's a really good athlete, and he is mean as heck. He plays against bad competition right now, so that kind of like affects how he's viewed. But I think he has a really, really high ceiling, and he could be like, the Ashton Craig type of one of these guys, where, like, he's not the highest rated guy of the bunch, but you're like, he ends up being a pretty darn good player.
Yeah. It's hard to argue with Dunham for sure. It definitely is. I think that And he's exactly what they've been kind of lacking, is just a dominant pass rusher. And I think that that's what he's going to be. As far as the commits, I agree with Garvin. I think he's a really talented player and a guy that could be. I mean, I actually like Ebenezer. I think he's going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah.
He's going to take a little bit of time, but that guy's going to be really, really good for Notre Dame. So I like him a lot, and he's going to be in a good situation. That's for sure. A lot of, he said, down in LSU land, there was a lot of hype around the VR simulator they used to train Jaden Daniels. Is this something that Den Brock is bringing to Notre Dame? I haven't heard this. I don't know. Have you heard anything about it?
Well, they asked him about it.
I know they've. I should say I know I've heard about it, but I haven't heard whether Notre Dame is bringing it in. Is what I'm saying. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I didn't hear about it, and I think that was one of the things that, like, he kind of said, like, yeah, he'd be open to getting it there, and I don't know how much he advocated for it. I think he said he obviously was a positive experience with Daniels, but as far as I know, Notre Dame didn't add it, and I don't know why they wouldn't have. If they just really wanted it, they would just spend to do it. Like, they got the money if they wanted it. So I haven't heard anything about it in terms of, like, if they've done anything with it, or if it's happening. No one, I think, has asked him about it in quite a while.
All right. Was there ever a concern that Bowden would try to recruit players off the active roster to USC? Seems like the concern was mainly on recruits. Yeah, I mean, there was certainly there, and I'm sure he's not done. I'm sure he's going to continue to try and get players from Notre Dame, but I don't think he'll have much success, so I don't think it'll be a big deal. All right, removing Dunham and Hola, as they've already set their commitment dates. We'll see where they end up. Who do you like most out of these remaining targets? Yama, Mikel Blade, Xavier Griffin Haynes, Golden, Wilder, or Quinn? And if Indy is fortunate to get Dunham and Hola, do you still take two from the short list of the five above? I know your answer to that is absolutely, but go ahead.
Quinn is the one that I like the most out of those guys, and I don't think he's I don't think his rating is that. I mean, my rating for him is higher than all those other guys. I do like all of these guys, though. I will say, like, I definitely think all of these guys are.
Do you like Golden better or Wilder better?
I like Golden a little bit better, just because he's just a bit bigger now. But I think Wilder's film is better. Like, I think he's, and I really like Wilder. I think he's got a real chance. I just think he has more physical development that he's got to do. But I'm a fan of all those guys. I would say maybe Wilder might actually be the guy that I think, next to Quinn, I think maybe has the highest ceiling. Out of those guys,
that's the way I look at it. Yeah.
And I think all those guys have really, really high ceilings, though. I think Quinn is just, like, incredibly underrated. I'm a big fan of his. I
am too. And I hate to say this, Jamie, and I'll probably take some flack for it. I struggle with California defensive linemen. You know what I mean? That has not worked out that great for Notre Dame. Some have, but not as much as you'd like. But with Wilder, I think he's got a chance to be really, really good. But for whatever reason, seems like a lot of Cali linemen are very hit and miss, and defensive linemen, and offensive linemen too. But and I think that's why USC struggles. Struggles at times, is because they have a hard time identifying who's going to be a very good defensive lineman, and there are a lot of guys that USC has signed over the years where you're like, oh man, that guy's going to be awesome, never to be heard of from him again. That has happened a lot at SC. Now, they've had a lot of great ones too, don't get me wrong, but they tend to get a ton of them, and not a ton of them end up panning out. But I do think Wilder's got tremendous talent, and I would definitely take him if you have a chance. All right, let's see. Guy wants to know, what is the change in ND recruiting this cycle? Again, I think it's success on the field, but I also think that Notre Dame's really kind of put together a good staff that has done a really good job. First of all, I think Carter has to be given a tremendous amount of credit, because I mean, he held that whole thing together when everybody else is looking out the door trying to find a job. He held strong, and I hope he's rewarded for that because um, I'm sure he was pursued by other people too and stuck it out and not just didn't stick it out. He was still doing the job and trying to juggle all these different balls in the air and keep everything afloat until they could get people in there. So we got to give him a lot of credit for that. That's for sure. But I just think they got a really good recruiting staff now, and I think that they're relating well to the players and their parents, and that's what is happening. Next question, will there be a weather report on recruits? Yeah, Christian's already working on that. Being loaded as we are at the running back position, can you see Aeneas Williams converting to wide receiver to improve that room a bit? He has good hands and speed. I think that there's certainly he could do that. I think he's a great receiver, and he showed it all through high school. I don't think he's I don't think he's quite as fluid as you'd need as a wide receiver, though, Jamie. I think because he's kind of more jacked up. He's more built like a running back. I don't think that'd be a good idea. Plus, they need him for third down, at least for now. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, and I also don't think he has the vertical speed to really I know he had the big run against Army last year, which was great. But he's not somebody that he can beat. He got matched up with Kobe King and he beat him for a fade and it was a great catch and whatever. But I don't think he can win versus linebackers. I'm not sure if he's someone who's going to go vertical against too many nickels. I don't know about that. They did have, it was just one play, but they had him and Braun Payne were in the backfield together with 21 personnel, and he motioned out to play receiver one time. I think him and those two and Jeremiah Love, they could do a lot of those kind of things, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing is he doesn't have to move there to do it. He could still be a weapon in the passing game. The other thing is if Aeneas Williams moves, he's a slot. Well, they're not hurting in the slot. That's not what they're missing.
Yep. All right. Last question. After the McElroy analysis, are we underestimating Steve Angeli's upside? He gained quite a bit of playing experience. I understand the issues around pocket awareness, but if the line is as good as we're thinking, it could be less costly. I'm not expecting Joe Burrow good, but he doesn't, because he doesn't have those types of receivers or arm talent, but he is very poised. He can deliver the ball in pressure situations. Yeah, I think that's all true. Are we underestimating him? I don't know if we're underestimating him. I think that we've all said he's a serviceable quarterback. He's a guy that'll get you 10, 11 wins. I firmly believe that. On this schedule, I don't think that he's the guy that's going to lose any game against any of those teams that they play. Can he help you win those games? Yeah, and a lot of them. Can he be the difference in the games? I'm not sure. But when it comes to playing a national championship game, is he good enough to win that type of a game? And that's really the next thing, it just is what it is. And when you look at Notre Dame's national championship game, obviously Riley played well for a while there, but Notre Dame's defense couldn't really stop what was happening on Ohio State. And Ohio State got good quarterback play. They just did. And it made a difference in the game. It really did. And the one play that made all the difference in the world was right on the money. Great throw by a quarterback, right? And obviously great play by a receiver. But that's what elite players do in big games. You have an elite quarterback throwing to an elite receiver who made a play. And that's really the difference between winning and losing. And so that's why it's really important to have a good quarterback in that type of game. And I think Riley Leonard made a lot of great throws and did a lot of great things in that game. I don't think that he was terrible or the reason they lost the game by any stretch of the imagination. But, I think Notre Dame struggled at times with Riley Leonard as a quarterback because they couldn't push the ball vertically downfield. That wasn't all on him. That certainly the receivers have to do a better job. line had to do a better job, although I think that they did a pretty good job in the game. Um, it just is what it is. And so for me, I think we've accurately stated what his upside is and his potential. It's just, can he win you that big game? Because that's the game that everybody wants to win. And that's where Notre Dame is now, Jamie. And I think they're going to be a top 5-6 team for quite some time now. I really do, because I think that they have the talent and the coaching. Once some of these coaches leave, can you refuel and get the same type of coaching? We'll see. But I think the talent's going to be there, that if they do bring in quality coaches, they're going to be in a great position. Your final thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think a lot of people kind of misconstrued what Greg McElroy was saying. Like, I think what he was saying was, because there was a question about CJ Carr, and basically it was anointing CJ Carr as like he's going to be the next Notre Dame quarterback, which, I mean, we could see, like, I mean, he didn't even mention Kenny Minchey, obviously, but he was talking about how, like, we don't know that Steve Angeli can't be what he can be. And it's true. We really don't know fully, because we've only seen bits and pieces. And we also don't know that he isn't going to make a jump like a lot of guys do, right? Because there's certain guys that I think you can say, like, hey, this guy can do this guy can do that. Well, all of a sudden, 4 or 5 games into a season, some guy can really just become a different player because they gain confidence, they gain experience, they learn different things. And that was like, I mean, it's different for all positions and stuff, but like at quarterback, it happens a lot. It really happens, right? So I think even if you look at, like, say, Ian Book in 2017, and remember, he had to come in and he had to start that North Carolina game because Wimbush was hurt, and he was just like, yeah, whatever, fine. And then he was in the Miami game. He comes in. I mean, nothing was going to help them in that Miami game, but he came in and he did not help at all, right? Well, except for during that time for up lead to the bowl game, he had put in all this work in practice where they were like, he's better right now, he needs to play. And then he played and he did well. And then it kind of built from there. Right. So, I think we don't know for sure what Angeli can be, but it's just like the same as, like, we don't know that even if CJ Carr wins this job, how he looks in week 2 is going to look way different than in week 7 or whatever. It's all going to change. Yep. And it's just something that no one should anoint anyone until we kind of get to kind of see it play out. And I'm certainly, like, I think Will Howard is a perfect example of you just bringing him up, Mike. He was a next level in the playoff. And in that game, like, not one quarterback, even Caleb Williams, when he had that great game in 2022, he did a lot of that on his own, like, of just like improvising, creating stuff, incredible, just stuff that was just for him. Will Howard did so much of this stuff within the structure of their offense, of just making these great throws and great decisions, even just like knowing to get rid of the ball. And sometimes, even though it was like, this is going to be incomplete, but like, I'm not going to take a sack here. He was just at a different level that normally, like, those are picks or sacks in other games and against that Notre Dame's played other opponents. Like we saw the week before with Drew Aller, and it just wasn't the same. He just was making every throw, and that wasn't the same guy that he was before. So
I agree.
Yeah. And I think you're just going to, we got to wait and see, let it play out.
Yeah. I agree. I think Will Howard played probably his best game of the year in that game. He really played very, very well. And I think he played well against Oregon too. I mean, and wanted to make sure that they win that game because of the way things had kind of unfolded for them. And they just got hot at the right time. They just put it all together at the right time. And Notre Dame was injured. It just is what it is. All right, that's going to be it. Somebody wanted to know what my daily driver is for my guitars. You see that blue one back there? I know this sounds crazy. I have 6 of those. Not blue. They got some black one over there. I got another black one over there. I have 6 of the same guitar, and those are my daily drivers. And why do I have 6? Because they're cheap, and it's more expensive. Well, I shouldn't make. It'll be almost as expensive to refret those guitars as it would be to buy a new one. So I buy cheap guitars anymore because I love those Gretches. They just sound amazing, and they have the Dynasonic pickups in them, and that's why I like them. So, all right, that's it. That's going to be it for the show. I hope everybody enjoyed that. We're very excited about what's going on with Notre Dame recruiting. If you get a chance, make sure you go to Irish Sports Daily, check us out, and sign up. Go to the premium section, sign up for premium subscription. There's going to be lots going on right now in recruiting, and we kind of previewed it. They're in great shape. So if things fall the way they should, this is going to be a fun spring, summer, and then going into the season. So we're going to be very excited about it. And Jamie, I just haven't been this excited about Notre Dame football in a long time, man. Long time. I'm very excited about it.
I'm super excited too. I think it's just, we talked a little bit off the air after last week too, is like, it's a pretty good time to be a Notre Dame football fan.
Oh, totally is.
Yeah. Maybe not for all other Notre Dame sports, but it's pretty good for Notre Dame football right now.
Yeah, exactly. All right, folks, that's going to be it. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week on Power Hour.